Welcome back to Black Chat. I'm your host, Robbie J. And next to me, I have Hassan and Paul. And today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into whether or not the United States should disband the Department of Education. It's been a hot topic. Folks have asked us, Robbie J., why don't you all go into having a deep dive on some topics? And as I said, if you follow us on Instagram, then you know we were kind of looking at starting the podcast off to kind of understand each other, right? So we started off with the rise of social media. That's an easy episode to do. We all have our opinions on social media. And then on top of that, we went into questions you have for Black people and questions you have for white people. We needed to understand our flow. We needed to move forward as a podcast group. So we kind of know our dynamic a little bit. And those were set up episodes to kind of go deep dive into what we were going to do starting today. So what can you expect from Black Chat moving forward? Two things. One is we're going to have more in-depth content where we're going to go into these particular issues and kind of debate and go back and forth. The other thing is that we're going to start opening this up for interviews. If you would like to be included on the Black Chat podcast as an interviewee, then let's send us a message at info@blackchatpodcast.com. We'd be happy to set something up with you. We're going to be moving podcast spaces here in the next couple of weeks, or it may have already happened by the time you see this episode. But either way, we're moving in a general direction and would really appreciate your support. But again, if you'd like to be interviewed, please let us know. All right, so let's start off with the Department of Education. Now, one of the big things with the Trump administration has been to eliminate the Department of Education. So, Paul, I'd really like to get your thoughts, at least generally speaking, and we'll get into the deep dive in a minute. Overall, what is your opinion on disbanding the Department of Education? Yes, no, a little bit of both. What do you think?
I say no. I don't think that should be done. However, we'll get into it with a deep dive. It's been around for a long time, and it's been through plenty of iterations of people trying to get rid of it, downsize the whole 9 yards. But if it's based off of what it was created or established for as an executive branch, I don't think it needs to be get rid of at all because of what it's. Well, let me backtrack. If it's doing what they're supposed to do, no. If they're not doing what they're supposed to do, maybe.
That's fair. How about you, Hassan?
Well, I worked in the educational system in Jersey City for 17 years. I see the pros and the cons to it. The pros are that they put monies where it should go, in neighborhoods and in communities where it should go, but they also take money away from where it should go. So if there's, let's say, $1 billion that's supposed to go here,
right?
Somehow 200 million makes it. Yeah. Where's the rest?
We'll be talking about
we don't know.
Yep. Yeah, we're gonna get into some stuff. We're gonna get into some stuff. And what you said, that's one of the things where I say, no, you shouldn't get rid of it because that's one of the things that you're supposed to be doing, education wise. But we'll get into it.
So, I mean, I went from a yes, we should disband the Department of Education to maybe, or a little bit of both. I think there's, generally speaking, there are cuts that I think could be made. But as an apparatus, I do think the Department of Education serves a value for the country. So I don't agree that it should be disbanded completely.
Okay. All right.
Get ready.
Oh, here we go. Want me to do the fun fact?
Fun fact.
The fun fact. How about let's run down the list, right?
Go ahead.
Number one, what a lot of people may not know, Department of Education was developed in 1867 by President Andrew Johnson. First Department of Education was demoted to the Office of Education in 1868. In 1979, President Jimmy Carter signed the legislation to establish the modern Department of Education. In 1980, we have the Department of Education as we have today.
Yep.
So that's a fun fact that a lot of people, but also there have been other presidents that wanted to disband the Department of Education. One being Ronald Reagan. but he changed his mind and didn't do so.
Yep.
So this is about to be an interesting conversation, to say the least.
Indeed. So my quick facts are the Department of Education's budget for 2024 was $268.4 billion.
Jesus.
That's quite a bit of money. Think of all the things that could fund that it doesn't. Anyway, 96%, according to the stats I read, and I don't believe this, but 96% of the funds go to schools. I think that's BS. I don't believe that for a minute. Based on what I've seen with our school system, no way.
Yeah.
But okay, we'll take the general fact. Those are the facts. 98 or 96%, 4% goes for their overhead each year. And in the U.S. overall, in the entire world, is the highest education spender on earth. We spend between $13,000 and $17,000 per kid per year. That's outrageous.
That is insane.
It is.
So I kind of looked at this from my standpoint, which is F that department. I'm done with it. I don't care. Government waste needs to be cut immediately. Go in with my chainsaw. Not that that's an Elon thing, but that's a Robbie J thing. I know people panic. Elon, I can't believe you said that. But it's true. I looking at the numbers just on the face, $268 billion. What the hell?
There's no way.
For what?
There's no way.
Are we building schools made out of gold? What is going on?
That's a lie. It has to be, because like I said, I worked in Jersey City for 17 years, and they have 50-something schools there. Let me tell you, they feed the kids prison food, plus, no, I'm not over-exaggerating, plus some of those schools don't even have air conditioning. They do not have air conditioning. So where are these billions of dollars going?
So you don't think that it went to the Disability Kids Act for those kids with disabilities? You don't think that actually went through like the pre-K, the 12 for the kids that have such disabilities? So you don't think that money went towards the education?
No. And I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
So I'm wearing the shirt today. You can't see it because it's underneath my my hoodie, because this is my Robbie J Flair, and it's really hot. It's the middle of summer in Georgia, and I'm sweating my ass off in here. But it's my thing. So I can say as a father of a kid who has a disability, quote unquote, the money doesn't get there, because what the schools are doing, and this again. This isn't the facts. This is Robbie J's experience with this. Is that so? My son has epilepsy. For folks who don't know, that's considered a disability, because what happens is when you have seizures, it affects your ability to cognitively recall information. So he will sit there at times. He'll have the information in his head. He just has trouble retrieving it. So that has put him on to several programs within. Now I can only speak to Georgia, mind you. We're talking about Georgia right now. So in Georgia, that puts you in a particular program called the IDP, and you could also get an IEP. But you have to qualify for those particular programs. So I can say that the support provided for my son was lackluster at best. And the reason that I can say that is because not only did they try and act like he didn't really have a problem, but the other thing is that what schools are trying to do to get more funding to reach these higher levels of echelon is that they're trying to push out the kids who are a problem and only focus on the kids who are cookie cutter. So I call this the cookie cutter kid problem, which is they only want to deal with the kids who come in who are perfectly normal and they do everything the same as everybody else and they eat their shitty lunches and stuff like that, and they just go through the steps. They don't have to mess with them. When my son came in, it was roadblock after roadblock trying to get him assistance and support. So my thing is, as you said, which is a good point, Paul, and that was one of mine, why I don't think it should be disbanded, is that it does provide that educational piece, that monetary piece to fund the IDP and IEP programs. That's important. I totally agree with you. We should be looking at that, especially for kids with autism, things like that. No problem here. But my thing is, when you're actually in the school system, where's that money? Because he didn't get it. I don't know. Where did it go? I have no idea. They didn't want to help him.
Yeah. And so,
go ahead.
And like, I agree. And so that's the other part that I bet the question is the why. Because just like I read that, they also supposed to provide funding to schools that's in rural and
That's right.
urban community, like those communities where there's underprivileged kids. So when we look at the school systems in a lot of cities, a lot of times, they have different ratings. And so, like in where we are, you have Richmond County, you got Columbia County. So Columbia County schools are said to be here, and so everybody wants to be in Columbia County because the education is supposed to be better. In Richmond County, the schools are at the bottom of the totem pole. They're not getting the same type of funding and resources that a lot of Columbia County has, and that's where a lot of the urban or rural or underprivileged kids go to. So that makes me question is like if the Department of Education is supposed to be that body that takes that funding, the 268 billion. Why is it? What's happening? What's the stopgap for where it is not being contributed to the schools that deserve, the schools that need it, as well as the programs that need it? Because disabilities is like that's a legit program.
Yes,
And so
totally.
if it's 268 billion, where's all that money going to?
They have to be getting more money than Columbia County. Larger counties get more money than the smaller counties. That's a fact. I know that for a fact. They get more money. They have to give them more money because they have more schools. Richmond County is a lot bigger than Columbia County.
Charter schools, probably. I mean, like the charter school,
They're definitely getting it.
like the charter schools in Richmond County are they top tier.
Yeah, you know why? They probably pay the teachers more.
Listen, like
Just a teacher with a master's degree gets $35,000, $40,000 to start, with $100,000 in student loans. Make it make sense. So they're not getting the top tier teachers.
No, they're not. But
Who think about it? You want to spend $100,000 on student loans and then go and make $40,000 a year? I wouldn't be a teacher either.
it's kind of crazy. I mean,
That's a whole other episode talking about colleges and how much of a scam that is. But
even with that, that's something else that Department of Education holds.
that's right. That's correct.
Pell
Right.
grants and loans. That's something else that Department of Education holds.
That's right.
If anything, I think they should separate it. They should break it up because it's like a monopoly almost. Break it up like it's a monopoly. Don't completely dismantle it. Just break it up. I think that probably will be a good solution for the Department of Education. Why do they have the ability to give money and also the ability to collect money? Just separate it. Separate the two.
I think it's even bigger than that. If you think about it, like with the student forgiveness loans that the Biden administration, who defied the Supreme Court, by the way, I'm not going to let go of that one, but they kept trying to allot for kids to not have to pay for their school loans. But my thing is, especially for impoverished communities, how many of those folks were actually impoverished? You see, this it's something in our country. I don't know what it is, to do the dumbest things instead of qualifying, like you were just saying, Paul. Instead of qualifying it for the schools that need the most money, right? And there are those sectors that do. We just give it to everybody. Why? Why am I funding a school in Massachusetts that has a 98% tax rate of their citizens, and they're funneling all this money into their school system? Why are they getting money at all from the Department of Education? Why are we focusing on the urban communities and those rural locales to focus those monetary? It's 268 billion. 268 billion.
That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. I'm beside myself with some of this stuff. But go ahead. I really am.
Man. But the other side of it, and we can get into other stuff, you got to look at what else it was designed for. It was designed to also make sure that everyone was treated equally and fairly.
Yes.
Black, white,
correct.
male, female, like the whole 9 yards. So if you look at it, why are they trying to disband it? Are they really trying to disband it so that equality piece leaves? Because that's one of the things that Jimmy Carter wanted to make sure that that was done. To make sure when he said, if you read the text, that's one of the things that go along with it, to make sure it's equality for each ethnicity, male, female, origin, the whole 9 yards. And so that's still an important piece. And you're trying to say, hey, let's get rid of it and put everything on the states. Why?
So I did research that, and the thought behind that, I'm not saying whether I'm for or against, we can talk about that in a little bit, but the thought behind the states thing was that education should be owned locally, that you shouldn't have a bureaucratic distribution of standards, things like that, that each state should own their own thing and that each locality should be responsible for what they do. Now, I tend to be in a little bit of both camps on that, in that I do think it's important locally to set standards for what you think the education should be. Especially revolving around the sectors that you have in your state. For example, you can see, at least in the past, that Georgia was a very agricultural friendly community, right? That's kind of what the inference was, where you could have Silicon Valley and those folks. They don't need the same things. It's two different places. Why do we always act like everyone's the same in this country when they're not? When we could focus targeted distribution of funds to communities that actually need it and that would actually use it. So I have a problem with those types of things where we're looking at, we don't quantify anything. We just like, well, whatever, we're funding everything. And I'm just like, well, have we taken a step back to look at whether that makes sense? Because since we've done all of this, and I talked to you about this earlier, Paul, which was since we started this educational thing that, as you said, Jimmy Carter started it was 79 or 80, but
legislation was signed in 79. It was
yes,
brought into
there you
80.
go. Thank you. Cheers. Which is that from 1960 to 1990, now that encompasses some of Jimmy Carter and some of FDR's plan, which was that the money from education would help raise up standards across the country. So from that time period, it did. Especially when it came to Black youths. Black youths not only increased their grade levels by 1.5 grades during that period, but they also were showing that they were getting better standardized test scores. Come to 2000 until today, and we've actually seen the exact opposite, which is that standards have dissipated and that folks are scoring even worse than they used to. So I don't know what the disparity would be in 2000. Why is that the particular year? But at least for the last 25 years, we can say that the educational funding has not produced any viable outcome. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can speak from my own personal preference.
Sure.
Or my own standpoint. I always tell my kids that they don't teach anymore. Because like you got to look at when we went through school, we had English class, we had English books, we learned pronouns, nouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, synonyms, homonyms. Like we learned all this stuff. We actually had math books, and we actually went in and teachers taught us line for line, everything. If you look at, even if you look at our schools today, are they really teaching, or are they just trying to push people through so they can score high on a test? So if because the county scores a certain rating or get a certain score overall, what happens? More money gets flooded into the school.
Yep.
So
right.
I believe today they're worried more about that piece than anything else. Like someone left a comment, money clouds everything. And so a lot of times, if a child now has a question about something, they feel like they don't understand, what do? They go to YouTube. And YouTube has somebody that's going to break down a math problem to them or break down what a word means. So, or like for me, like, hey, what does that mean? Or I explain to them in terms my kids are able to understand it.
Yep.
That's a major thing. And the crazy part about it, leading into that, if you look at the states, that's supposed to be the state's piece. The states control the curriculum.
Yes, that's correct.
And it's not so in that regard, that's not on the Department of Education. However, if you're trying to put that on the states and make it local, why? Because if they're changing the curriculum, same thing like I brought up the last time, we was talking about how the guilt that the white race may have about certain things, especially what happened to like the Black race. Look at what they're trying to do. They're trying to erase certain things from our history. Black history is being taken out. Stuff that has to do with indigenous peoples, Indians, is being taken out. They're trying to wipe us out so they could get away with wipe out that guilt. So I think the states may have their own agenda on things instead of worry about the right thing. That's my own personal opinion, which is just an opinion. Not a fact. That's Paul's opinion, just FYI.
But there's also the issue where some schools allow certain things to happen. They don't really care if the kids pass because they get more money if the school is failing. What about that part?
What about when one of our commander chiefs had pass no fail?
George Bush, is that
Yep.
right?
You
Right.
talking about the, what was it? No Child Left Behind? Was that?
No child left behind.
That
Yeah.
was garbage.
Yeah.
You see
And-
how that worked,
Yeah, just push them out.
right?
But
yeah,
like that was the thing. Like the kid had to worry about what they made or how they did in class.
Nope.
they should have called it All Child's Left Behind.
I mean, it was like no pass fail, no
All
child left
children.
behind. Go. I mean, but that was the thing though. And then you had kids that's not really. Some still tried and still made effort, and then you had others like, forget it. I'm gonna go to the next grade anyway.
Mhm.
The school, some of the schools don't care. They getting paid regardless.
And that's wrong. That's wrong in so many ways, though.
But that's what happens when you leave it up to the local government or the state. I know it for a fact.
So, do you think that may come down to like some people feel like they don't have a voice?
They may have a voice. You know, a lot of the parents try. They try, they cry, they yell, they go to the meetings, they do everything they can, but it really doesn't matter when it comes to these boards and politics. Politics run everything. And all they want is more and more money. More schools are failing, the more money they get.
That's sad.
I
is.
mean, I
That's
tend
sad.
to agree.
It is.
That's sad.
I mean, to your point, that when you're talking about like we don't teach kids real skills.
No.
Why are we not focusing on having classrooms that talk about AI?
Mhm.
Why don't we have? You have to go to college for this stuff. Why don't we have excuse me. Why don't we have regular K through 12 programs focused on investment banking?
Mm.
Why don't we have? Why don't we have any of these things that actually are a real deal? Let me learn. You have to, of course, with math is pretty standard, but in general, there are many things in our world right now that kids they just learn on their own, which is great. But why isn't there a curriculum focused on
But
it?
they took it out of schools
Yeah.
because, like, I can remember when I was in 7th grade, I had a class where they literally taught you how to manage an account, learn how to balance a checkbook.
Yep.
We had stuff like home ec,
Yeah.
and we had like stuff,
Carpentry, shop class.
yeah, shop
shop.
classes.
We had computer class. They took computers out. They took computer class out.
Yep.
And like that's the thing. So and like that's one of the things. If you look at the Department of Education, that's one of the things they supposed to help mandate and regulate.
Mhm.
That does not leave education. That don't leave schools. That like trades is probably one of the most important
Mhm.
things that we need today. And there isn't enough people that's in the trade industry.
Yes.
Carpentry.
That's right.
That like Bart,
Mhm.
where is it? Like we used to have vocational schools with the high schools, and even we still taught certain things in middle schools. It's not being taught. It's somebody needs to like grant. I understand that people want to disband it, but someone needs to speak up. Someone needs to, I don't know how, but that accountability piece has to happen. Has to happen.
No, well, we turned our back on vocational skills. That's what we did as a nation. We said that's beneath us. We can import people to do those things, whether you like it or not. It's just the truth, and we can import these people to do these things. A Democrat just recently said, not that it doesn't matter what party you are, that they can wipe our ass, and I was disgusted by that comment. That's messed up. We shouldn't be importing people to wipe our ass. We should be importing people that help our country to succeed. And my thing is, we've had this, I'm going to just call it what it is. We've had this push for college education, which is BS. Not everyone needs a college education for everything. You have kids coming out of their school learning about all kinds of silly shit that's meaningless. You have a degree in basket weaving. I'll just use that as the easiest example.
Dance.
Right, in dance theory. No one effing cares about that degree. That degree is worthless, but you also spent $80,000 on that damn degree. So what are you going to do with it? So we've indebted our young people with huge college loans, with interest levels that are not massive, but enough to make it where you're going to be paying that off for 30 years. That's ridiculous. And instead of just telling people there's nothing wrong with being a welder, there isn't. You can make $100,000 being a welder. I don't think people know that. You can make good money being a trash guy. These are occupations that are neat, and honestly, they have such a low level of folks that are going into them. They're offering higher and higher pay to attract people into them. There's nothing wrong. And I know we have an elitism culture, and I really despise that. There's nothing wrong with the guy that cleans the toilet. He's just as much a human as you are. And we need to get out of this bullshit where we act like those are lesser than or those are beneath me. No, they're not. We all contribute to society so that we all can live. Much like Hidden Figures is a great movie. I don't know if you've seen that. To showcase how even someone that doesn't have a freaking rocket science degree can actually be in something and help to accomplish something else. That's important. You need those people. You know, we've heard that anecdotally for a long time, but it's really true. Why don't we look to those people? Why don't we raise those people up and say, if we don't have someone who's a plumber, how are you going to flush your toilet? You can't take a crap anymore. You can't have anybody to fix your pipes.
Plumbers make good money.
And they do.
They make more money than we do.
Yeah, that's true. And they should. And they should.
Electricians.
Right. So why aren't we putting an emphasis on those types of careers? That's my big problem with all of this.
I think that we forgot. Well, I don't like. Matter of fact, I don't think that we still use the terminology today in this country, because I know the vocational or trades are called typically called blue collar, and where people wear suits and they in academic business, white collar jobs. That was a terminology that I learned when I was a kid. But I don't know if that's still used. However, I can tell you that I got student loans, and because I came from one of those those communities, or came from like a bad situation, they threw a lot of college money. They threw a lot of loans at me for my education, and and I'm paying for it. But my degree isn't something that like I wanted to do.
Sure.
However, that's true. But even with that, I think some of the stuff you're talking about as far as people that work those jobs, that's a taught thing, to be honest with you. That's a self-respect thing. However, when we're dealing with the Department of Education, I think that's a tough one, man, to be honest with you. I just worry that if you get rid of it, how are the kids with disabilities? What's going to happen to them? How are they going to be treated?
Yeah, I agree with that.
What's going to happen to, because you want to put everything on the local government, but the local government's still trying to figure their own stuff out. So how are they going to take care of the education? How are they going to take care of those kids in those rural communities or underprivileged communities? Are they going to take care of kids with disabilities? They can't get this stuff out their own way. So I think if you put it on them, it's going to make things matters worse, to be honest with you.
Okay. I think it's a fair point. I do think more localized control can help in some. It's a situational thing, right? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. To each their own. Just touching back on the student loan thing, what were you allowed to use your money for the student loan for? Whatever you wanted to. Remember that? Yeah, I got them too.
Yeah,
and you could use it for room and board. You could use it for food. They don't monitor. Once they give you the check, they don't give a shit what you use it for.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. You're talking to me about an 18-year-old who's getting a check for 40 grand. They don't know what's going on. They're like, oh my gosh, well, I have, my semester is $35,000. I have $5 grand left over. I can go and eat it at nice places.
But no, like I didn't get that money.
No.
Yeah, but
I just mean in general.
Yeah, but like for me.
So did
I
I.
spent it.
So for me, like it paid for my room,
Sure.
my board, and the food I ate.
Yep.
And it also allowed me to do per se in like the work study program. So like where if I got like classes, like I worked. See what I'm saying? And then like during the summer, I was doing agriculture work at like the school I was at. I was cutting grass, and I learned how to do certain things. So that's why I take pleasure in, like, if I'm at home, like I cut grass, I edge and do all that stuff. I learned that from when I was in that school. So no, everybody, like, you may get a check after that, like if it's anything left, like, hey, here's a few $100. Okay, cool. I can spend a few $100.
Mm-hmm.
But majority of my stuff, it was towards my education. Like legit. And I worked while I was in school. So that's what my
That's
stuff
good.
went to.
I don't know.
Like schools were just better back then, I think. Like I know this may sound funny and don't look at me crazy, but I learned how to bake and sew in school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned that
I
in
did too.
school.
Yeah.
I know how to stitch. Like as an adult, I know how to do that because of school.
Right.
But they
Yes.
took it out. Like it no longer exists,
Yeah.
and that's freaking ridiculous. They
Yeah,
took
I agree.
computer classes out and computer teachers out at the moment where computers started booming. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
I don't understand
And
it
these
either.
are things that the Department of Education is supposed to have oversight over. Like,
Correct.
why don't they have oversight on it? Like,
Right.
where are they in those cases?
That's
Local
the question.
control.
I don't know.
Local control decided to take those things out. We don't need it because we need the budget for this.
Right.
But they needed the budget for their pockets, for their salaries. Because in Jersey City, what happens is, let's say if there's a budget problem where the budget isn't agreed upon,
Mm.
they say, okay, teachers, you can't get it. You can't get a raise this year. But guess who's getting raises? Or the administrators.
Administration, right.
Where did that money come from if we didn't have the money?
Right.
Where do you think it came from? I was in those situations, so I know I can speak on it firsthand.
This
Didn't get a raise
268 billion. That's
Didn't
what
get a raise for 3 years, but all the administrators got their 10, 15% raises while we were sitting there. And then when Obama got in there, he did his Obamacare.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing. They couldn't agree on a contract. I remember it was for 3, 4, or 4 years, no raise. Everyone else is getting a raise. Where's that money coming from? From those programs they canceled. Where was the oversight? Where's the oversight?
So I got one for you.
Yeah.
$9 to $45 billion of this budget is unaccounted for each year.
Yeah, of course.
So I guess it went to those raises.
Of course.
Wow.
Of course.
What is unaccounted for?
Unaccounted for.
Hmm.
How
9.
much?
So the lowest estimate is 9 billion. The highest is 45. So we'll just cut it in the middle and say what? 22, 23
Hmm.
is unaccounted for every year.
Let me tell you, I got some stories, but I'm not gonna say it.
Yeah.
I have some stories. When we turn this off, I'll tell you.
Okay.
I have
Okay,
some stories. This
so-
is bringing up memories.
So here's my thing too, right?
Yep.
So, and this where I kind of waver at times. So Georgia has a lottery.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, you get it. Right.
Florida has a lottery.
Yep.
Maryland has a lottery.
Yep.
State taxes. You pay state taxes, road tax, all these different taxes.
Yep.
Mhm.
A lot of these lotteries supposed to be to help with what?
Education. Correct.
Okay, so if schools supposed to get money from Department of Education, now some of the monies that the states get supposed to go for scholarships, and like I get it,
That's
you know
right.
what I mean? Like Hope Scholarship for Georgia, but I'm pretty sure that does not cover. There's still some that's left out there. There's still money left out there. Where's that money go? Because like
I don't know.
like you're paying for taxes, everything. So how much money do you really need for programs in schools?
So I did a little bit of research on this. This is pretty interesting to deep dive on. So Mississippi, Alaska, and New Mexico. So 2 red states and 1 blue state. Their biggest need of their federal funding for education is 20%. They use 20% of their budget is from the federal government. New York and New Jersey have the lowest. They are 2 blue states. They only the federal funding only encompasses 12% of their annual budget. So just to give you an idea as to like where that money goes and which states use it. So it seems like primarily a lot of the Department of Education money is going to red states. At least that's what I found overall. And much less going to blues. I don't know if that answers your question as far as like the distribution of funding and how that works, but I agree with you that something is amiss. I call it the Great Maryland Lie, which was we did not have a casino in Maryland until Martin O'Malley was our governor. And what he said was, at the time, the proceeds developed from the casinos will go 100% into education. Did that ever happen? Of course not, because all they did was do what every American politician does, is just tell you what you want to hear and then do the exact opposite when they get into power. Now, to be fair, portions of that, and I couldn't even find the numbers. I ran through a whole bunch of things. The numbers aren't even published, Paul, as to where the money went. We don't know. But we know that a good majority, meaning 51% or more, went to educational funding through the casino revenue program. However, where is the rest going? I don't know. And I also want to know, from a strategic standpoint, how much money do we really need to give each kid per year to freaking go to school? It can't be this expensive. As I said, the United States is the biggest spender on earth, and we have the dumbest kids on earth. Now, I'm going to qualify that by saying we actually have mid-tier kids. According to statistics, our kids in the international community test mid-range as far as test scores in the entire world. The only thing we are really bad with is math scores. We suck at math in this country. Garbage. Yes.
But Mississippi is ranked like 34th in education.
That's right. Correct. They get a huge amount of money. That's right.
But New York is number 1.
Yes.
That doesn't add up.
Why is that?
So if they're getting the most money for education, that means the education system should be, in my humble opinion, that means like they schools should be getting enough funding and they kids should be doing their thing, but they're ranked almost at the bottom.
That goes back to my point. The most failing schools get the most money because they feel like they need more help. That's what I said. I told you. I know these are facts because I worked there. I know how it goes. I was there in budget meetings. I know exactly how this goes.
That makes zero
Fails
sense.
to get more money.
That makes zero sense.
Yeah.
But
It's the truth.
But also but now you're talking about schools and money. Now the last time I checked, if you have a free lunch program and the more kids you have that's receiving free lunch, those schools get a lot of money too.
For the lunch program.
Yeah, so that means that you have the rural and the underprivileged kids, a lot of like the assistance kids going to your school. And that
falls under, Medicaid, Medicare. That falls under
right.
that falls under
Right.
welfare and food. That's where that goes.
Right.
That's where that comes from.
More handouts, more shell games to move our money around where we can't find it anymore. It's amazing how that works. Yeah, no, I mean, I look at that and I just think, why aren't we doing a state-by-state maybe audit to say, if Massachusetts has a high tax rate, as does Maryland, but Maryland also has casinos and things like this. Why aren't we looking at each individual state from the federal government and saying, what exactly are you doing for your education? How much money are you bringing in for education? And then what are you doing with it when it goes to these schools? Because as you said, Hassan, some don't even freaking have air conditioning. What the hell? It's 2025. What is going on?
Like, I don't know. But if that's the case, the whole government needs to be audited.
Oh, I'm fine with that. Let's audit the Fed first. I mean, you sign me up. Absolutely.
If that's the case, the whole government needs to be audited.
Absolutely correct.
There's definitely some problems things that are going on.
Yep.
But I'm all for education, man. But I will always lean back to, if I had to choose, I'm going to get rid of it because I know there are certain things that we're not able to change. However, my kids and my kids' kids and how they're treated still rings out in my mind. I don't want to see nobody mistreated. I don't want to see disabled kids not getting the things they needed.
Same.
I mean, I know there are some instances where that is not true, but yet and still, like, in those cases that they are. I don't want to see it taken out of schools. And I don't believe that a local and state government is going to do what's required to make sure that those things happen.
Because, when local government takes over, that also means the mayor is involved.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying anything after that.
No need.
Like I said, after
no need.
Some examples. I'm not saying
no need.
But the mayor's involved. That's a totally different beast.
Total program.
I think this is what we're all alluding to, which is local control works if the populace is involved locally.
Right.
Unless you're just like we always hear this, how many people vote in a federal election versus their local and state elections? It's disparate by a long shot.
Right.
Most people focus on the federal and just say, well, that's how our country is going to be run. And I think folks need to understand that we need to kind of pivot from that and move towards a more local lens. Your local municipalities, your city, your state is much more important than the federal government. It just is. I know that that's strange for us as Americans to realize, but it really does matter. If you're not paying attention at the local level, as you just alluded to, who's the mayor and what are they up to? I don't know, because I don't pay attention to that. I'm just paying attention to Trump and Elon fighting this week. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the silliness that happens. If we were more locally focused, I think that a lot of these issues could be resolved.
Right.
Or this is just my opinion on a quick solution. Not a quick solution, but it could be a solution. Instead of it being a national, Department of Education, make each state have its own. I know they have a form of it, but the overall, the big boss, as I say, maybe you should kind of, distribute those out to to each individual state.
Yeah.
That may be a good solution. Each state keep their own lottery money or something, like something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
It needs to be completely dismantled, not dismantled in a way where you just completely get rid of it.
Right.
Just I just say break it apart, break it up. It's like they have a monopoly on everything. Like, just break it up. What do you do with a company that's not producing, or they're overproducing, or doing too much?
You break it up.
You break it up.
You break
It's
it
a
up.
monopoly. Break them
Yeah.
up.
It's true.
It's too big. It's too huge. They're doing too much. It's a simple solution for a messed up situation.
Yeah.
It's simple. At least in
Yeah.
my small eyes.
Right. Hey, just put us in control for 20 minutes. We'll figure this out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
That's right.
We'll figure it out.
24 hours.
Okay. That's
We'll
fine.
figure it out.
They gave it to Elon.
130 days, right? That's what we need.
Jeez.
Oh, man. He's still sour about that. All right. Anyway.
Let him in the building.
Right.
Anyway.
Really appreciate you all listening. This is Black Chat. I'm Robbie J. This is Hassan. This is Paul saying goodbye. If you follow us on Instagram, we really appreciate it. If you would share and like this video, even write us a comment, we would really appreciate that too. Engagement drives the algorithm, as you've heard many producers and content managers say. It's just really the truth. But we appreciate you all continuing to stick with us. Understand there's some folks out there who think we have controversial opinions and have lots to say on that. Again, if you want to send us an email, if you want to come on the podcast, please send us something and let us know. It's info@blackchatpodcast.com. I really appreciate y'all. I'm Robbie J. We'll catch you in the next one.